Chosen ones, listen carefully. They didn't come for you one at a time. They came together, quietly, deliberately, a whole group of them, meeting behind closed doors, agreeing on a story before you ever knew there was a story to defend against. They built it like a web, thread by thread, timed messages, rehearsed lines, a plan they were sure was airtight. And last night, that same web, the one they built to catch you, closed in on the people who spun it instead. Let that land for a second. You didn't set a trap. You didn't plot anything. You just kept living, kept moving forward, while they sat in rooms you weren't invited to, deciding how to take you down together. They thought numbers made them safe. They thought a group could never be traced back to any one hand. What they never calculated is that a web built by many hands has many places where it can tear. And once one thread snaps, the whole structure remembers exactly who built it. They believed the group would hold. But secrets shared between people who don't fully trust each other don't stay buried. They just wait for enough pressure to find the cracks. That pressure just landed. Right now, the same hands that tied those threads are the ones tangled in them. And there is no clean way to walk out of a trap you built with your own fingerprints all over it. Thank you for being here, Chosen One. If this message is already sitting somewhere in your chest, hit like and subscribe. Not for me, but for the next person scrolling past who needs to hear that the trap closing in on them was never built to hold. Your support is what carries this message to the Chosen One, still waiting for their turn to hear it. Here's what you need to understand before we go further. This wasn't luck. This wasn't some lucky break landing in your favor out of nowhere. This was cause and effect, patient and exact, the kind that doesn't announce itself until it's already finished. If you can feel that truth settling in right now, drop 77 in the comments, so I know you're still here, still watching this unfold in real time, because what's about to happen to the people who hunted you together is happening for the exact reason they thought made them strong: each other. Number one, they needed a crowd to feel brave, and that crowd is exactly what's exposing them now. Alone, not one of them would have tried it. Alone, every single one of them would have hesitated, second-guessed, maybe even talked themselves out of it completely. But put them in a group, give them a shared target, and suddenly courage they never actually earned shows up out of nowhere. That's not real bravery, Chosen One. That's borrowed confidence, the kind that only exists as long as everyone else in the circle keeps nodding along. The moment one person in that circle stops nodding, the whole illusion collapses. That's exactly what's happening right now. They built their plan the way cowards always do, in numbers, because a crowd feels safer than a single voice standing alone with a lie. They told themselves that if enough people agreed on the same story, it would become true, simply from repetition. They told themselves that shared guilt somehow weighs less than guilt carried alone. They were wrong on both counts, and they're learning that the hard way. Here's the part they never saw coming. A group that comes together out of convenience instead of loyalty was never actually unified. It only looked unified from the outside. On the inside, every single one of them was quietly protecting themselves first, watching the others, calculating exactly how much blame they could survive if things went wrong. That's not a team, Chosen One. That's a room full of people standing on the same thin ice, each one secretly hoping someone else falls through first. Imagine a group of people crossing that thin ice together, arm in arm, congratulating themselves on how strong they are as a unit. Then one person shifts their weight wrong. The ice doesn't ask permission before it cracks. It doesn't check who meant well and who didn't. It just breaks, and it takes the whole line down with it. That's what's happening to them right now. The very thing they thought made them untouchable, their numbers, is the exact thing making sure none of them can quietly slip away unnoticed. You were never afraid of them individually, were you? Deep down, you already knew that most of them wouldn't have had the nerve to look you in the eye alone and say the things they said behind your back. It took a crowd to give them that nerve. And now that the crowd is the thing under the microscope, that borrowed bravery is evaporating fast. They're realizing, one by one, that hiding inside a group doesn't erase your individual fingerprints. It just delays the moment someone finds them. And that moment already started. Watch what happens to people whose courage was never their own once the group that supplied it starts falling apart. They go quiet. They go still. The same voices that were loudest in that room, the ones egging everyone else on, the ones treating this like a game they couldn't lose, those voices are the first to disappear the moment the room stops feeling safe. That's how you know it was never real strength to begin with. Real strength doesn't need an audience to hold it up. And the moment the audience scatters, so does everything they were pretending to be. Number 2. The plan needed perfect timing, and one small crack is all it took to start the unraveling. Plans like theirs only work if every single piece lands exactly when it's supposed to. One message sent a little too early. One person reacting a little too fast. One detail that doesn't line up with the version someone else told. That's all it takes. A plan built on perfect timing is a plan with no room for human error. And human beings are nothing but error waiting to happen, especially when they're nervous, especially when they're lying, especially when they're doing it together instead of alone, where mistakes are easier to hide. They rehearsed the story. They agreed on the details. They probably even practiced how they'd act if you confronted them, what faces they'd make, what tone they'd use. But rehearsal only prepares you for the moment you expect. It does nothing for the moment you don't. And the moment that broke everything wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was small, almost forgettable. The kind of thing that happens in half a second and changes everything after it. Think about a row of dominoes set up with careful precision, each one placed just far enough from the next to fall in a perfect chain. It looks impressive standing still. It looks like control. But dominoes were never built for control. They were built to fall, and all it takes is one nudge, one piece slightly out of place, and the entire careful arrangement collapses in a direction nobody planned for. That nudge already happened for them. You didn't have to push anything. Their own timing pushed itself. Here's what makes this different from an accident. This wasn't bad luck landing on them randomly. Plans built on lies are inherently unstable, chosen one, because lies require constant maintenance. Every person involved has to remember the same version, in the same order, with the same details, every single time someone asks. That's an enormous weight to carry, and it only takes one tired moment, one distracted answer, one slip in a conversation they thought was casual, for the whole timeline to fall out of sync with itself. And once a timeline falls out of sync, people start noticing gaps. They start asking follow-up questions. They start comparing notes, without even meaning to be suspicious at first, just curious. And curiosity is patient. It doesn't need to prove anything today. It just needs one loose thread to pull, and it will keep pulling until the whole thing unravels in front of everyone. That thread is already being pulled right now, and none of them know how to stop it without making things worse. What makes it worse for them is that every attempt to fix the timing now creates a new inconsistency somewhere else. They patch one gap and open another. They correct one detail and contradict something they said 3 conversations ago. There's no version of damage control here that doesn't require more lying, and every additional lie is one more thing to keep straight, one more chance for the timeline to slip again. A plan that needed perfection to survive was never going to get a second chance at getting it right. Number 3. They wrote the ending before it happened, and reality refused to follow their script. There's a special kind of arrogance in deciding how a story ends before the story has even played out. They sat in those rooms, and they wrote your downfall like it was already finished. They pictured your reaction. They pictured you shrinking, apologizing, disappearing quietly, the way they needed you to for their version of events to make sense. They were so confident in their own script that they never once considered what happens when the person the story is about doesn't perform the part they were assigned. You didn't play your part. You didn't collapse the way they scripted. You didn't scramble to defend yourself the way they were counting on, because a scramble would have looked like guilt, and guilt was the whole point of their plan. Instead, you did the one thing their script had no page for. You stayed exactly who you already were, calm, unmoved, watching. And a story with no reaction from its main character isn't a story anymore. It's just a group of people standing around, holding a script nobody is reading along with. Imagine actors rehearsing a play for weeks, memorizing every line, blocking out every movement, completely convinced the show will go exactly as written. Then opening night arrives, and the lead actor they built the entire plot around simply doesn't show up to react the way they need. The other actors are left standing on stage, lines half-spoken, entire scenes falling apart in real time in front of an audience that's starting to notice something is very wrong. That's exactly where they are right now, still holding their script, still waiting for a reaction that was never going to come the way they imagined. Here's the part that should sit with you, chosen one. Every plan they wrote assumed control over something they never actually had, you. They could control what they said about you. They could control the timing of their messages. They could control the room they told the story in. But they could never control how you would actually respond, because that was never theirs to write. And a plan that depends on controlling someone else's behavior is not a plan at all. It's a gamble. And right now, the house is collapsing on the ones who placed the bet. They're realizing, slowly and painfully, that the story they wrote only worked in the version where you cooperated with your own defeat. You didn't. And a script abandoned halfway through doesn't just disappear quietly. It leaves evidence everywhere. Half-finished lines, contradicting scenes, actors who forgot which version they were supposed to be performing. That mess is theirs now, every page of it, and there's no director left in the room who can fix it before the audience finishes reading between the lines. And the audience is exactly the problem for them now, chosen one. The people watching from outside their little group are not obligated to see this the way they scripted it. They're free to notice the gaps, free to ask why the reaction never matched the story, free to wonder out loud why the person being accused of so much never once behaved like someone with something to hide. An audience that starts asking its own questions stops following the script entirely. And that's exactly what's happening now, one quiet observer at a time. Number 4. The one they trusted to stay quiet couldn't carry the weight, and that's where the first thread pulled loose. Every group like this has one. The one who agreed to everything in the room but never actually felt settled about it once they walked out. The one who nodded along because saying no felt harder than saying yes in that moment, but who carried the discomfort home with them every single night after. Groups built on pressure instead of genuine agreement always have that person, and that person is always the first place the whole plan starts to weaken from the inside. They didn't account for conscience, chosen one. They accounted for loyalty, for fear, for the social pressure of not wanting to be the one who breaks rank. What they didn't account for is that some people simply cannot hold a lie for long without it eating through them from the inside. It shows up in small ways first. A hesitation in their voice, an answer that comes half a second too slow, a look they can't quite hold, and the people around them, so focused on protecting the story, don't even notice they're standing next to the exact place where it's about to crack open. Picture a dam holding back an enormous amount of pressure, built by many hands, each one contributing a piece to the structure. Most of that dam is solid, but dams don't fail from being uniformly weak. They fail from one small point of weakness that nobody reinforced properly, one place where the pressure was just slightly too much for what was built there. Water doesn't care how strong the rest of the dam is. It finds the weak point and it goes through it. And once it starts, there's no patching that hole fast enough to stop what comes next. That weak point already gave way. Somewhere in that group, someone is carrying more guilt than they know how to hold quietly. And guilt like that doesn't stay contained forever. It comes out in conversations they didn't plan to have. It comes out in details they didn't mean to share. It comes out the moment someone asks a question gently instead of aggressively, because gentle questions don't trigger the defenses people build for confrontation. Here's what makes this so fitting, chosen one. They picked that person because they seemed easy to control, easy to convince, easy to keep in line. They mistook someone's kindness for weakness they could use. But the same conscience that made that person easy to pressure into silence is the same conscience that makes them incapable of carrying silence forever. What they saw as their most controllable piece turned out to be the loosest thread in the entire web, and once a thread that loose starts pulling, it doesn't stop at just one strand. And here's what makes it spread so fast once it starts. That person's discomfort doesn't stay contained to just their own conscience. It shows up around other people in the group too, in the way conversations get shorter, in the way eye contact gets harder to hold, in the way everyone starts quietly wondering whether this person is still fully in it with them. Doubt is contagious in a group that was never built on real trust to begin with, and one visibly cracking thread is often all it takes for everyone else to start quietly checking their own. Number 5. Every message became a record they never meant to leave behind. Here's something people planning something they know isn't right always forget in the moment. They're so focused on the plan itself, so wrapped up in building the story, coordinating the timing, agreeing on the details, that they forget every single conversation they're having about it is leaving a trail. Messages don't disappear just because you feel confident. Screenshots don't care how sure you were that nobody would ever need to look back at them. Every text, every voice note, every quick message meant to coordinate the next move became a timestamp, a record, a piece of proof sitting quietly in a phone somewhere, waiting. They talked about you the way people talk when they think no consequences are coming. Freely, carelessly, confidently. And confidence like that makes people sloppy. It makes them say more than they need to say. It makes them joke about things they should have kept serious, brag about details they should have kept private, reassure each other in writing about a plan that was never going to survive daylight. None of them thought about who might eventually see those words outside the group they were sent to. Imagine someone writing their entire plan down on paper, sealing it, and hiding it somewhere they were sure no one would ever look. Then imagine that exact paper resurfacing at the worst possible moment for them, every word still legible, every detail still intact, nothing lost to time the way they assumed it would be. That's what a message thread does. It doesn't forget. It doesn't get more forgiving with time. It just sits there, patient, until the moment it matters most. They thought a private group chat meant private consequences. They thought a deleted message meant a deleted problem. But deleting something from your own view doesn't delete it from existing. Somewhere in that chain of conversations is a version of events written in real time, unfiltered, unrehearsed. The truest version of what actually happened, because nobody was performing for an audience yet. And that unfiltered version is worth more than every rehearsed story they've told since. Because rehearsed stories can be polished, real-time messages can't be unwritten. That's the part they never planned for, chosen one. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to defend yourself or dig anything up. The record already exists, sitting exactly where they left it, quietly outlasting every version of the story they've told since. And a record like that doesn't need help finding its way to light. It just needs enough time. And time is the one thing that was never on their side to begin with. Records like this rarely surface all at once either. Chosen one. They tend to come out in pieces, one screenshot here, one forwarded message there, each new piece confirming what the last one suggested, each new piece making it harder for anyone to claim the earlier ones were somehow taken out of context. That slow drip is often worse for the people involved than one single dramatic reveal would have been, because it means the discomfort never fully ends. It just keeps arriving, a little more each time. Number 6. They built the trap around your silence, mistaking it for absence. This is where they made their biggest miscalculation. Chosen one. They watched you stay quiet while they planned, while they talked, while they built their story, piece by piece, and they read that silence as surrender. They thought it meant you hadn't noticed. They thought it meant you had no idea what was forming around you. So they got bold, they got careless, they stopped being as careful as they should have been, because a target that isn't reacting feels like a target that isn't paying attention. But silence and absence are not the same thing, and confusing the two is exactly how people expose themselves. You weren't gone, you were simply not performing for them. You weren't giving them the reaction that would have let them know how much you'd already picked up on. And that restraint, the very thing they mocked as weakness, was actually the reason their plan had room to grow so large it eventually became impossible to hide. Think about it like a group of hunters tracking through a forest, convinced the forest itself is empty because nothing is moving, nothing is making noise, nothing is giving away a position. They get louder, they get more confident, they stop checking their surroundings as carefully, because an empty forest doesn't require caution. But a quiet forest isn't an empty one. It's simply a forest where whatever lives there already knows exactly where every hunter is standing and is choosing, for now, not to move. That's what your silence was. Not confusion, not surrender, awareness, patient and unspoken, while they mistook your calm for permission to keep building. Every plan needs its target to stay unaware for as long as possible. They assumed your silence meant that condition was met. It wasn't. And because they believed it was, they never adjusted their approach, never covered their tracks as carefully as they might have if they'd known you were paying attention the entire time. Here's the part that must be settling in for them right now. If they'd been more careful, more cautious, treated your silence as awareness instead of ignorance, this might have unraveled slower, quieter, with more time to cover the gaps. But arrogance doesn't plan for the possibility that it's wrong. It plans for the version of events where it's right. And they were so certain your silence meant you were unaware that they built their entire trap out in the open, in plain view, leaving every single thread exactly where it could eventually be found. There's a lesson underneath all of this, worth naming clearly. Chosen one. Not just for how it applies to them, but for how it applies to you going forward too. Restraint is not the same as blindness. Choosing not to react in the moment doesn't mean nothing is being noticed. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is exactly what you already did, without even trying to be strategic about it. Stay quiet, stay aware, and let the people who mistake your stillness for surrender keep building on a foundation that was never as hidden as they believed. Number 7. The alliance cracked from the inside before anyone outside ever touched it. Nobody had to break this group apart from the outside. Chosen one. That's the part that makes this so satisfying to watch unfold. You didn't confront them. You didn't expose anything yourself. You didn't have to organize a counterattack or gather your own evidence and present it to the world. All you had to do was continue existing calmly while they did the work of destroying their own alliance entirely on their own. one small crack at a time, from the inside out. Alliances built on shared guilt instead of shared trust are fragile in a way that alliances built on genuine loyalty are not. When people come together because they actually care about each other, small disagreements don't threaten the whole bond. But when people come together because they're all equally implicated in something they know was wrong, every disagreement becomes dangerous. Every moment of doubt becomes a threat, because if one person starts to waver, everyone else has to wonder whether that wavering will eventually point back at them. Picture a group of people holding up a heavy structure together, each one bearing part of the weight, none of them able to let go without the whole thing shifting onto everyone else. That works fine, as long as everyone trusts everyone else to keep holding steady. But the moment one person starts to feel like they're carrying more weight than they agreed to, or starts to worry that someone else might let go first and leave them exposed, that trust turns into suspicion. And suspicion inside a group like that spreads fast, because everyone already knows exactly how much everyone else has to lose. That's exactly what's happening now. They're not looking outward for threats anymore. They're looking at each other, wondering who talked, wondering who's been acting strange lately, wondering who might be the one to break first and take the rest of them down trying to save themselves. And once a group turns that suspicion inward, it stops functioning as a group entirely. It becomes a collection of individuals, each one quietly calculating their own exit, and a plan that required unity to survive cannot survive people quietly planning their own way out. You get to watch this from a distance, chosen one, untouched by any of it. You didn't cause this fracture. You simply stopped giving them a reason to stay unified against a common target, and without that target reacting the way they needed, the only thing left holding them together was fear of each other. Fear is not glue, it's pressure. And pressure like that always finds the crack eventually. Notice what this means for how the rest of this plays out. A group that turns on itself doesn't need an outside force to finish the job. It finishes the job on its own, methodically, each member quietly working against the others, without ever officially declaring that the alliance is over. By the time anyone outside the group notices the fracture, the group has usually already done more damage to itself than anyone outside it could have managed in the same amount of time. Before we go further, Chosen One, I need you locked in for what's coming next, because this is where it stops being about them planning against you and starts being about them turning on each other completely. If you felt even one moment of this hit, close to something real in your life, drop 77 in the comments right now, so I know you're still with me. And if this message has meant something to you, consider leaving a super thanks. It keeps this mission moving, and it reaches the next chosen one who needs to hear exactly this, at exactly the right time. Now let's keep going. Number 8. They started blaming each other before anyone else had to. This is the moment every plan built on shared guilt eventually reaches, chosen one, and it always arrives faster than any of them expect. The moment the pressure gets high enough, the group stops asking how to protect the story and starts asking how to protect themselves individually. And the fastest way to protect yourself when a group starts unraveling is to make sure you're not the one holding the most blame when it finally comes apart. So they turn on each other, quietly at first, then not so quietly. It starts small. A comment here about how it wasn't really their idea. A private message there, reminding someone else that they were the one who pushed hardest for the plan in the first place. Nobody says it directly yet, but everyone in that group can feel the shift happening, the subtle repositioning, everyone trying to move themselves a little further from the center of the story and a little closer to the edges, where blame is easier to deflect. Imagine a group standing in a circle, and somewhere in the middle of that circle is a fire that's just been discovered spreading. So without anyone announcing it, the whole circle starts shifting, everyone taking one small step back, one small step away from the center, until the space in the middle is empty and everyone left is standing just far enough away to say, "That wasn't really me." That's exactly what's happening inside their group right now. An invisible shuffle, everyone repositioning, nobody willing to admit out loud that it's happening. Here's what makes this so fitting. The unity they needed to make their plan work required every single one of them to stay equally committed, equally silent, equally willing to hold the story together no matter what. But self-preservation doesn't care about commitments made under different circumstances. The moment the group started to feel exposed, every promise they made to each other became optional, replaced by a much older and much stronger instinct: protect yourself first. And a plan that depends on people prioritizing loyalty over self-preservation was never built to survive real pressure. It was only ever built to survive the version of events where nothing went wrong. This is usually the part where the group stops being a group at all, in anything but name. They still talk. They still coordinate on the surface. But underneath every conversation now is a quiet calculation nobody says out loud. How do I make sure my name comes up the least in whatever version of this story survives? That calculation changes everything about how people behave, and it rarely stays hidden for long, because self-preservation, unlike loyalty, doesn't know how to disguise itself convincingly under real pressure. Number 9. The web meant to catch you is now catching its own weavers. There's something almost poetic about how this works, chosen one, and I want you to really sit with the shape of it. A web isn't built to hold the person who spins it. It's built to trap whatever wanders into it from the outside. That's the entire design, entirely dependent on the weaver staying outside their own creation, moving freely around the edges while the trap does its work in the center. But something strange happens when the person who was supposed to stay outside that structure gets pulled into it instead. That's exactly where they are now. Every thread they spun to catch you, every rehearsed detail, every coordinated message, every carefully timed move, was built with the assumption that they would remain untouched by it, standing safely outside while you struggled inside something you couldn't escape. But a web doesn't actually know the difference between the one it was built for and the one who built it. It only knows what touches it. And the moment their own carelessness, their own messages, their own cracks and blame and panic started brushing against those same threads, the web did exactly what webs do. It held on. Picture a spider so confident in its own construction that it starts walking carelessly across strands it should have respected, forgetting for a moment that the same stickiness built to hold a struggling target doesn't recognize its creator as an exception. One wrong step, one careless movement, and suddenly the spider is exactly as stuck as anything else that's ever touched that web. That image should sit with you for a while, chosen one, because it's not just a metaphor anymore. It's exactly what's happening to them. They can't simply walk away from what they built, because walking away would mean untangling from every single thread they personally wove into it. Every message connects to another message. Every person connects to another person. Every excuse they've offered connects back to a timeline that doesn't hold up under close inspection. There's no clean exit from a structure you built entirely out of your own choices, and the harder they struggle to get free right now, the more entangled they become, because that's what webs do to anything that panics inside them. You were never meant to be caught in this, and you're not. You're standing entirely outside it, watching something they built with their own hands do exactly what it was designed to do to whoever got tangled in it. They just never imagined that person would be one of them. That's the irony that should sit with you longest out of everything in this chapter, chosen one. A trap doesn't know who deserves to be caught in it. It just knows what touches it and holds on. They spent so much time perfecting the design, making sure it would be strong enough to hold you, that they never once built in a way to protect themselves from their own creation. There was never supposed to be an exit built for the weaver, because the weaver was never supposed to need one. Number 10. Doors that used to open for them are quietly closing, one at a time. People who build their confidence on being part of a powerful group forget one important thing: chosen one. Every door that opens because of association can close for exactly the same reason. They walked around for a long time, enjoying access, enjoying the comfort of belonging to something that felt untouchable, trading on the group's reputation without ever stopping to ask what happens to that reputation once the group itself becomes the problem. They're finding out now, one closed door at a time. It doesn't happen all at once. That's what makes it feel so disorienting for them. A conversation that used to be easy suddenly feels a little stiff. An invitation that used to arrive automatically doesn't come this time. Someone who used to return their messages quickly takes a little longer now, then a lot longer, then not at all. Nobody announces the shift. Nobody sends a formal message explaining why things have changed. The doors just quietly stop opening, and eventually they notice the pattern is everywhere, not just in one place. Imagine walking down a long hallway you've walked 1,000 times, so familiar with every door along it that you never had to think twice about which ones would open for you. Then one day you reach for a handle you've turned 100 times before, and it doesn't give the way it used to. You tell yourself, it's just that one door, an anomaly, nothing to worry about. Then the next one doesn't open either. Then the next. And somewhere along that hallway, you realize it isn't the doors that changed, it's what people now know about you, standing on the other side of them. That's the quiet consequence nobody warns you about when you build your safety on being part of a group instead of standing on your own integrity. The moment the group becomes associated with something people don't want to be near, that association spreads to everyone in it, whether they were the loudest voice or the quietest bystander. People don't always wait for full proof before they start protecting their own distance. Sometimes the smell of smoke is enough to make them close a door they used to leave open without a second thought. They're learning this in real time now, chosen one, and there's nothing they can do to speed the doors back open. Trust doesn't reopen on demand. It has to be rebuilt slowly, individually, and rebuilding trust after being part of something like this takes far longer than it ever took to lose it in the first place. And here's the part that stings the most for people who built their whole identity around access and belonging. Losing a door here or there might feel manageable at first, explainable, temporary. But when enough doors close in the same short window of time, it stops looking like a coincidence to anyone watching, including the people standing behind those doors. Patterns are impossible to argue with once enough of them line up. And right now, every closed door is quietly confirming the same story to everyone paying attention. Number 11. Their confidence became the evidence that convicts them. Here's something worth understanding deeply, chosen one, because it explains almost everything about how this fell apart the way it did. Confidence isn't dangerous by itself, but confidence built on the assumption that no one is watching, no one is paying attention, no one will ever piece it together. That kind of confidence makes people careless in ways caution never would. And carelessness leaves traces, every single time. They were so sure of themselves, so sure the story would hold, so sure their numbers made them untouchable, so sure that nobody would ever bother connecting the dots, because connecting dots takes time, and most people are too busy to bother. That confidence is exactly what let them get sloppy. They said things out loud they should have kept private. They repeated details slightly differently in different rooms because they never imagined those rooms would ever be compared. They acted like people who believed they were being watched by no one, and that belief is precisely what left the clearest trail behind them. Picture someone walking through fresh snow, completely convinced no one will ever bother tracking where they've been, so they don't bother to cover their steps, don't bother to double back, don't bother to walk along the parts of the ground where the snow won't hold a print. They walk in a straight, confident line, exactly where they intended to go, never imagining anyone would follow. But snow doesn't care how confident the person walking through it feels. It holds every step exactly where it landed, in order, easy to trace from beginning to end for anyone who eventually decides to look. That's what their confidence did. It made the path easy to follow because they never bothered to make it complicated. If they had moved with fear instead of certainty, they might have covered their tracks more carefully, second-guessed their choices, left fewer clean lines connecting one moment to the next. But arrogance doesn't plan for being caught. It plans for being right, and being wrong about that is exactly what's laying every piece of this out so clearly now for anyone willing to look closely. You didn't need to build a case against them, chosen one. They built it themselves, one confident, careless moment at a time, never once pausing to consider that the very certainty keeping them calm was the same certainty leaving a trail straight back to where it all started. It's worth noticing how quiet you got to stay through all of this, chosen one. You didn't need to chase down proof or corner anyone into a confession. You simply kept living your life honestly, while their own overconfidence did the slow, patient work of writing everything down for anyone who eventually needed to read it. That's not something you orchestrated. That's simply what happens when certainty meets a story that was never true to begin with. Number 12. The bystanders who feared the crossfire are stepping out of the circle. Not everyone near this was actively hunting you, chosen one. Some people were simply standing close, watching it happen, choosing not to get involved because getting involved felt riskier than staying quiet on the sidelines. For a while, that worked fine for them. Staying neutral felt safe. But neutral positions only stay comfortable as long as nothing forces a choice. And something is forcing a choice right now, whether those bystanders wanted one or not. As the group at the center starts to unravel, the people standing near it are realizing something uncomfortable. Proximity looks a lot like participation once things start falling apart. Being seen with the wrong people at the wrong time, being included in the wrong messages, being present for the wrong conversations. None of that requires active involvement to raise questions. And the people who spent months staying quiet, staying neutral, staying comfortably uninvolved, are now scrambling to make sure nobody mistakes their silence for agreement. Think about people standing near a building right as it starts to come down, close enough to have been inside it recently, close enough that someone might reasonably ask what they knew and when they knew it. Even the ones who genuinely had nothing to do with the structural problems find themselves needing to explain their proximity, needing to create distance quickly, needing everyone to understand they were never actually part of what caused the collapse, just unfortunately standing nearby when it happened. That scramble is happening right now, all around the edges of this. Here's what's interesting about this part, chosen one. Some of those bystanders knew more than they ever let on. They heard things, they saw messages, they stayed quiet, because speaking up felt like more trouble than it was worth. Now that trouble has arrived anyway, and staying quiet didn't protect them from it the way they hoped it would. It just delayed the moment they'd have to explain themselves, and delayed accountability has a way of looking worse than accountability offered early, because it starts to look less like ignorance and more like a choice. You don't need to sort out who knew what, or who stayed quiet for which reason. That's not your job to untangle. All you need to notice is that the circle around this situation is shrinking fast, people pulling back, distancing themselves, quietly removing their names from anything that might connect them to what's collapsing. The web isn't just catching the ones who built it anymore, It's testing everyone who stood close enough to touch it. This is often how the truth spreads widest. Chosen one, not through one loud confrontation, but through dozens of quiet people individually deciding they no longer want their name anywhere near what's unraveling. Each one of those quiet exits confirms something a little louder than the last, until the picture becomes impossible to miss for anyone still paying attention. You don't need every single person involved to speak up directly. You just need enough of them to stop showing up for the story, to lose whatever credibility it was still clinging to. Number 13. Every lie needed a bigger lie to hold it up, until it broke under its own weight. This is how it always ends for stories built on something false, chosen one, and it happens the same way every single time. A lie rarely stays small. The first one requires a second one to support it, to fill the gaps the first one couldn't quite cover on its own. And the second one requires a third, because now there are two versions to keep straight instead of one, and gaps between them start showing up in places nobody anticipated. Eventually, the structure holding the whole story together isn't made of a single lie anymore. It's made of dozens, stacked on top of each other, each one a little more fragile than the last, because each one has to account for everything that came before it. They didn't realize how much weight they were adding every time they patched a hole in the story. Every follow-up explanation, every reassurance to each other that the story still made sense, every small adjustment made to fit new questions, all of it added mass to something that was never structurally sound to begin with. A building built on a weak foundation doesn't get safer the taller it gets. It gets more dangerous because there's more weight pressing down on the same cracks that were already there from the start. Picture a tower built entirely out of playing cards, each new card balanced carefully on the ones below it. The builders growing more confident with every level they add because it hasn't fallen yet. But height doesn't create stability in a structure like that. It just raises the stakes of the eventual collapse. Every card added is more weight resting on a foundation that was never meant to hold this much, and the taller it gets, the less it takes to bring the entire thing down at once. That's exactly the shape of what they built. Story upon story, explanation upon explanation, until the whole thing was standing on almost nothing at all. Here's the part that should give you peace, chosen one. You never had to add a single card to that tower. You never had to lie about anything, adjust anything, keep track of multiple versions of the same story. You just had to keep living honestly while they kept building higher and higher on something that was never going to hold. And towers like that don't fall quietly. When they go, they take everything with them, every card, every level, every carefully balanced piece collapsing at once, in front of everyone who spent time admiring how tall it had gotten. That's usually the part people underestimate the most. Chosen one, how public the collapse of a tall lie tends to be, compared to how private its construction was. They built it quietly, carefully, out of sight, adding pieces one small conversation at a time where nobody else could see the whole structure taking shape. But collapse doesn't happen quietly, the way construction did. It happens loudly, visibly, in front of exactly the people they were trying hardest to keep from ever finding out. Number 14. The collapse is complete, and you were never even in the room for it. Here's where this ends, chosen one, and I want you to notice something important about how it ended. You weren't there for any of it. You weren't in the rooms where they planned. You weren't in the messages where they coordinated. You weren't part of the meetings where they blamed each other, the conversations where trust fell apart, the quiet exits of the bystanders who didn't want to be associated anymore. Every single part of this collapse happened without you lifting a finger, because it was never actually about what you would do. It was about what they had already set in motion the moment they decided to build something out of lies and call it a plan. That's the part they'll never fully admit, even to themselves. They didn't lose because you fought back harder than they expected. They lost because a structure built on shared guilt, borrowed courage, and careless confidence was never going to hold up under its own weight, regardless of what you did or didn't do in response. You could have spent this entire time worried, defensive, trying to get ahead of a story you thought was coming for you. Instead, you simply continued being who you already were, and that alone was enough to outlast every single thing they built to try to take you down. Think about a house built quickly, carelessly, with corners cut everywhere no one thought anyone would check. For a while it stands. It even looks solid from the outside, convincing enough that people walking past assume real work went into it. But a storm doesn't care how convincing something looks. It only cares whether the foundation was actually built to hold. And when the storm comes, and it always comes eventually, the house doesn't fall because of anything happening outside it. It falls because of everything that was missing on the inside from the very beginning. That's what just happened to them. The storm wasn't you. The storm was simply time, doing what time always does to anything built on something false. You were never the one under pressure here, chosen one, even when it might have felt that way in quieter moments. You were the one steady thing in a situation built entirely on instability. And steady things don't need to fight collapsing structures. They just need to keep standing while everything unstable finds its own way down. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly where this ends. Them, tangled in something they built with their own hands, and you, exactly where you've always been, untouched, unmoved, and still standing. Carry this with you after tonight, chosen one, not as a reason to celebrate someone else's collapse, but as proof of something far more useful. You never needed to hunt anyone back. You never needed to build a single thread of your own. Every trap eventually reveals its architect. Every web eventually tests the hand that wove it. And every group that comes together to bring someone down eventually finds out that unity, built on the wrong thing, was never unity at all, just a shared countdown waiting for its final second. If this message reached exactly where it needed to reach inside you tonight, chosen one, that's not a coincidence. Hit like, subscribe if you haven't yet, drop 77 one more time in the comments, so every other chosen one scrolling through can see how many of us felt this the same way, and share this with someone who needs to hear that the trap closing in on them right now was never built to hold. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and goodbye.